All right, I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. So this is, we are holding a press conference, and this is with our organization, SAFE, the Selah Alliance For Equality, and we are partnered with We Care About Black Lives Yakima. And we're going to have Kareem come up here, Kareem James, and Kareem's going to tell you a little bit more about us.
Woo! Let's go, Kareem!
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Good, good, good. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Kareem James. I'm one of the proud administrators of Selah Alliance For Equality, better known as SAFE, and I will be speaking on our behalf. I'm a father, teacher, and I have been a resident of Selah for about a decade. I'd like to mention we're also working in concert with WCABLY, the We Care About Black Lives organization, whose purpose is to raise awareness for the Black Lives Matter movement here in Yakima Valley, and to uplift and encourage African American people and anyone who supports the movement. We mainly wanted to address statements made by Mayor Sherry Raymonds during the July 28th City Council meeting. But first, we want to tell you a little bit about who we are, so I'd like to share our mission statement. We are a coalition of Selah and Yakima community members who initially came together to address our concerns about City Administrator Donald Raymonds. Mr. Raymonds' disparaging and threatening comments about Black Lives Matter protests, his history of sexual misconduct, and his targeted harassment of free speech activists have led to a collective realization that we as a community can no longer sit idly by and remain silent against injustice. As a result, we have created the Selah Alliance For Equality, with the goal of making Selah a safe place for Black and Indigenous people of color, the LGBT+ community, women and girls, and all other marginalized groups in America. To this end, SAFE is dedicated to the following goals and objectives: a commitment to recognizing, addressing, and eradicating all forms of oppression, including but not limited to racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism. Creating an educational safe space for dialogue, especially for marginalized voices, and teach others how to reduce inequality within our community. Affirming our community's support for the global movement for Black lives, and dispel the virulent misinformation campaign that seeks to discredit the intent, scope, and positivity of this growing civil rights movement. Black Lives Matter. Identifying and seeking to remove bigoted public servants, employees, and community leaders from their positions, and encourage the boycott of businesses they are associated with. Organizing and/or supporting protests dedicated to the causes we promote and identify with. Encouraging our members to keep these events safe and inclusive. Acknowledging that regardless of one's position in society, individuals are at various points in understanding and promoting these concepts, and that having these conversations requires courage, respect, and compassion, and may not always be or seek to be comfortable. Fostering and deepening our relationships with fellow community members, and seeking to build a positive and inclusive reputation for the city of Selah. Now, concerning Mayor Raymonds' statements, we feel it is our moral obligation to stand up, be bold, and express our grievances with her leadership. There are three things we specifically wanted to address: her continued support for City Administrator Donald Raymonds. Number two, purposefully calling out BIPOC residents by first and last name, and purposely attempting to assassinate their character and credibility, and nullify their deeds and fuel acts of aggression towards them. And lastly, how she directly contradicted her own words by attempting to silence the voices of the citizens of Selah, Washington. Mayor Raymonds began her statements by noting she would no longer listen to the citizens of this city who want to remove Donald Raymonds. She said her ears are deaf to our rants about Texas. We are bad actors. We know nothing about justice. We know nothing about advocating for change. I'd like to say that we have taken every legal recourse we can, and we will continue to do so until Raymonds is removed from office. We know that justice, real justice, was not served in Granbury, Texas. We believe women. Mayor Raymonds, our resolve is strong too. Raymond has to go. Concerning the quote-unquote bad actors, we were appalled by the mayor's irresponsible decision to explicitly name specific citizens during a publicly broadcasted and recorded city council meeting. It was the type of decision that incites and inspires violence towards BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous people of color. We have evidence that people who have joined our cause have been accosted, threatened, intimidated, even prior to Mayor Raymond naming names and putting targets on the backs of Selah citizens. The evidence includes Donald Wayman implying he was carrying a concealed weapon during a peaceful BLM protest in early July. Publicly stating the names of some of our members was reckless, specifically only naming the BIPOC members was telling, and we believe her statements were meant to deliberately embolden the people she asked to quote-unquote restore Selah to sanity. Mayor Raymond, Selah has not lost its sanity. In fact, Selah has woken up to an opportunity to be a beacon of hope. We can be an example for Central Washington. As a community, we can join the millions across the globe that are fighting for justice and equality. It's an opportunity for a better tomorrow for our children. In your words, we owe it to ourselves, to our forefathers, and our future generations. Lastly, Raymond falsely claimed if we want change in Selah, we can just, quote, send a respectful email that advocates our preference, schedule a meeting, or engage in a lawful protest. Note she said all of this after saying none of us would ever hold any sway on matters of policy as long as she was mayor. Mayor Raymond, for months, we have sent respectful emails, we've scheduled meetings, and we have engaged in lawful protest. We have attempted all kinds of communication and have adhered to all demands for how to communicate. We have made every effort to meet you at least halfway. And unfortunately, all we have received from the city is intimidation, threats, and betrayal. A safe admin who is a highly respected member of the community and a peaceful advocate for change worked face to face with you, only to be patronized and stabbed in the back. These are the facts. Raymond also stated she's only in the office on Selah business from 9 to 11, 2 days a week. We need a mayor who spends real time in the office and meets with constituents, especially in times of great need and unrest. Our petition to remove Donald Wayman has reached over 3,000 signatures. In a city of 8,000 people, how does 3,000 signatures fall on deaf ears, Mayor Raymond? We need a mayor who will listen to the people. If the door is indeed open for discussion, here's exactly what we are looking for. Redirection of police funding towards other agencies, entities, and training programs that will lighten the burden of sending police to situations in which they are woefully ill-prepared. Investments in community social services, education, after-school programs, mental health services, housing, and de-escalation training as the default police response. Creation of an independent body to investigate all allegations of misconduct and police brutality, not just those situations in which death has occurred. Mental health services for officers and the continuation of updated training and/or training refreshment courses over the course of officer careers. More stringent requirements for becoming a police officer, including cultural training to aid them in better serving and protecting the community in which they're employed. Active investment in dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline by fully investing in education. Removal of any police presence from school grounds. Investments made, not just in pure academics, but in wellness areas such as art, music, sports, and theater. Decriminalize the homeless. Being homeless is not a crime. Humanity demands an increase in services and investment in housing programs to address homelessness, not the undue burden of being criminalized. And lastly, a show of solidarity that the city of Selah stands for the basic American beliefs we all hold by renaming a major city street after Martin Luther King Jr. SAFE membership grows by hundreds of people at a time each week. We are growing and we are strong. I'd like to close with a few words from some of our members concerning why they chose to join SAFE. One member, who is a person of color, was on the verge of moving from Selah because of the microaggressions her and her family had to endure over the years. She writes, I came to the United States of America when I was 20, 27 years ago. I decided to become a teacher after serving the Yakima community as a GED instructor. I taught GED classes for Latinx women. I learned that many of them, like me, lived in fear because of systemic racism. I saw the need to advocate for them. I decided to better myself by pursuing higher education. I attended college, eventually earned my master's in administrative leadership with a principal certification. I've been an active member of the Yakima community and participated in countless committees for the Selah School District, eventually settling in Selah and working exclusively for the Selah School District. I have an African-American husband and one of my sons has special needs. I believed I was going to be welcomed and embraced for the diversity and cultural wealth I was bringing to the district. I was wrong. In Selah, I was heavily criticized and ultimately prohibited from disseminating real and relevant information about BIPOC history and culture. I've always experienced so many unfortunate microaggressions from this community regarding me and my family. Right when I felt like the opportunity to have a voice was useless in Selah, right when I was certain I needed to move, SAFE came into my life. I am determined to keep learning and advocate for those who are voiceless or feel invisible. In conclusion, I joined SAFE because I want to stay here and I want to work together for a better community. Another member writes, growing up, I never realized how twisted Selah and its people are. I was a young white kid. I dealt with bullies and the same things you would expect a kid attending public schools to deal with, and I was by no means a poster child for a good kid, but I made a point to be better. I grew up being taught and believing a cis white male was physically, spiritually, and morally better than anyone else. But I changed. So why can't a city change their ways when the point of leadership is to support all citizens? How can we accept leadership in a town that removed public comments from meetings? How can we accept leadership from a town that declares chalk a crime? How can we accept a city against human rights? Why is it Selah does not see a problem with the murder and abuse of unarmed people? Why is the city not in arms over a city official that called the pandemic the Wuhan virus? Why do the people of Selah still drop racial slurs with abandon? I see a city of proud whites that only look after their own. I say you are not the only ones here, and it's time to wake up and be decent human beings. That means taking a stand. Ultimately, the solution is no longer just saying you are not racist, but to be anti-racist. It's time to grow or leave. For as long as people have been mistreated, we must fight for equality. I don't know about all of you, but I'm not even almost tired. Got a few more here. Because I've been fighting this city for years, and to be honest, I thought I was alone in this fight. They've tried to silence my voice for years. I gave up on this town a long time ago because they sweep everything under the rug. I'm just glad I'm not the only one who sees it. And I have another. She says, everyone deserves human rights, and Selah leadership missed the memo. Another. We are at a time in history where we must stand together and rise up to call out and fight injustice and racism everywhere we see it, regardless of the offender. While separate cities, Yakima and Selah are inexplicably linked through proximity, relationships, and commerce. Allowing injustices to go unchecked in one city paves the way for injustices to go unchecked in the other. SAFE is fighting back in Selah, and I, as a Yakima community member, am proud to stand alongside my neighbors to make sure everyone in Selah can live a happy, healthy, fair, and just life. And another, I made a conscious choice 6 years ago to move from Yakima to Selah to raise my daughter. From my position of white privilege, it seemed like the perfect place to raise a child. The longer I've lived here, the more I realized that wasn't the case. Recent events with Selah's local government, alongside the community's views about Black Lives Matter movement, were too much for me to continue to sit silently. Our children deserve to live in a better world. They deserve to know BIPOC lives matter. They deserve equality, love, and opportunity without discrimination. We may not always be able to correct past wrongs, but we absolutely can stop them from continuing into the future. And another one, I had a Black coworker encourage me when I said I was trying to face my own privilege and empathize with people who have suffered racism. Then the opportunity to protest came up and I was encouraged. Prior to that, I had an interest in getting involved in city council issues, but it came to the forefront with recent events. I hope to inspire my children with my newfound activism. Another? My daughter lives with her mom, half-time in Selah. She's 3 and a person of color, living with a family that's all white. I hope to help end the severe racism the citizens of Selah have allowed to go on for what seems like forever, so she doesn't have to grow up hearing the same idiotic things I did while growing up in an all-white family. Another? After speaking with friends and family members and hearing how racism affects them on a day-to-day basis, my heart broke, over and over. This has been an ongoing conversation, but especially recently. My father and his partner left for Seattle years ago. My dad's partner is a gay black man, so you can imagine how that went over, locally. I traveled to Seattle for their marches and protests in June. I love being a part of it in the community where everyone loves everyone and supports each other. The vibe is real. It never even occurred to me it could happen here. How sad is that? We talked about moving and getting away from the toxicity that is Selah, but then you guys happened. We want change, massive, disruptive, dramatic change. Change that spreads city to city, small redneck town to even smaller redneck towns. We are standing up for the people we love and the people we haven't met yet. And on a side note, it is just extremely embarrassing, on top of the racism that exists in Selah, that we have a predator in control of a puppet for a mayor. It has to start with good leadership. Personally, when I read these, I feel hope. Brass tacks, bottom line, whatever you want to call it, I feel like we're waking up. And not for me. I've lived in this world long enough to navigate microaggressions, othering, blatant racism, and whatever else gets in the way of my personal mobility. I grew up knowing that I would have to work harder than my white classmates to pursue and attain the American dream. I grew up knowing that once I achieved that dream, I'd have people judging me and thinking it was because of governmental concessions and not my own ability. I am dedicated to creating a new world and a new way of thinking. And it doesn't start with New York. Oh, thank you. It doesn't start in New York. It doesn't start in Chicago. It doesn't start in Seattle. It doesn't start in the big cities. It starts here. From here, my children, the next generation, will reap the benefits. Noting our demands, everything points to ending systemic ideology, which is a battle I am near certain I will not be won in my lifetime. These testimonies, what the people are saying, why they are fighting, why they joined SAFE, give me joy because they point to a world where my sons don't have to experience what I've experienced. I see a genuine opportunity for love, acceptance, and justice. I see Selah on the cusp of becoming something great, something inspiring and influential. I see a city that my boys can be proud of, not afraid of. With this in mind, I humbly petition the mayor and members of city council to either step up and listen or step down and resign. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kareem. That speech kind of woke me up here, so I'm feeling a little bit better. So we're going to have a couple other speakers. The first is going to be Sam Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sam Johnson. I am a Yakima community member, co-founder, and chair for Keep Yakima United. I was one of the comments that Kareem read earlier, so I'll repeat some of that, but also expand. We are at a time in history where we all must stand together to call out and fight injustice and racism whenever and wherever we see it, regardless of the offender. While separate cities, Yakima and Selah are inexplicably linked through proximity, relationships, and commerce. Allowing injustice or racism to go unchecked in one city paves the way for racism to go unchecked in the other. During this moment, we must take actions to unite our communities, not divide. Sherry Raymond, Don Wayman, and Rob Case make no meaningful attempt through their actions or words to unite their community. Instead, they use their platform to hold on to unacceptable old ideas, speak mistruths, and divide. They refuse to make a good faith effort to listen, learn, or grow when confronted by a community with valid concerns and viewpoints, and instead try to intimidate and silence them. And for the first time in their lives, it isn't working. It is clear to everyone who is part of this fight that they are scared of the persistence and diversity of a global movement that holds them accountable and challenges their worldview. This global movement for equality, justice, and fairness will not be silenced, and it will not be ignored. We recognize for this movement to be successful, we must first hold our local elected and appointed officials accountable and enact structural and meaningful change in our local communities to help enact widespread and structural change globally. The Selah Alliance for Equality is standing up and fighting back in Selah, and I, as a Yakima community member, am proud to stand alongside my neighbors here in Selah for this fight. I am asking any Yakima community member who cares about equality, who cares about justice, and who cares about fairness to join this movement as well. Because when the community of Selah can make systematic and meaningful changes, it makes it easier for the community members of Yakima, the community members of Washington, the community members of this country and of this world. It makes it easier for them to make meaningful and systematic changes so that everybody, regardless of their race, background, gender identity, sex, can live a fair, just, and equal life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So next we're going to have Courtney Hernandez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Courtney. I'm one of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement here in Selah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my background growing up here in Selah and why I began the movement. Throughout my life, I have been consistently traumatized by the forceful assaults, arrests, and murders of Black people committed by cops and white supremacists. To name a few victims in recent years: Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Botham Shamjean, Tamir Rice, and Atiana Jefferson, among countless others. However, this year, in the span of a few short months, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd were all murdered. Seeing these innocent people die in such close proximity was truly traumatizing to me. As I saw protests erupt across the entire world, I knew it was time to get involved and help fight the fight of systemic racism and violence in America. I first attended a protest in Yakima that went exceptionally well. I saw people from all walks of life coming out to support Black lives, and it sparked a fire in me, truly. I knew I had to fight for change now. At this protest, I reunited with an old friend from school, Jose Rocha. Next thing I knew, we were planning a protest in Yakima. It was a great success. We then decided that the movement was desperately needed in our hometown of Selah. In the days leading up to our first Selah protest, we were questioned, belittled, and threatened by Selah community members, most notably in the Selah Neighbors community group. Because of this uproar of hatred, many people I invited to our event that attended our Yakima event refused to come out of fear for what might happen here in Selah. That's our reputation. However, on the day of our event, over 150 people showed up, restoring my faith in humanity and further igniting a fire within me. During our event, we peacefully and respectfully marched and protested throughout Selah, even though we were flipped off, screamed at, called the N-word, and threatened. Although it was scary, we prospered. As we peacefully protested in front of the Civic Center, we noticed a suspicious man leaned up against his car across the street, glaring at us the entire time with a hand steady at his hip. That man later called us protesters, which included teachers, lawyers, first responders, medical workers, veterans, children, and most of all, Selah citizens, devoid of intellect and reason, and domestic terrorists, just to name a few of the insults received. This man is Selah City Administrator Don Wayman. Because of this, our movement took a turn we did not anticipate. As noted earlier at the last City Council meeting, Mayor Sherry Raymonds called out multiple leaders of the movement by name for being, quote, evil, bad actors who have no knowledge of justice. She continued to say that while she is in office, we will never see any of the reform that we've proposed. She also specifically called me out, saying that since I don't have voting power in Selah, my voice doesn't matter. I thought the hopes of communities were to send their kids out, get an education, come back, and give back to their communities. That's what I'm trying to do here. I may not live in Selah currently, but this is my hometown. I'm trying to create change for future generations and my family and friends who live here currently. That's one thing I agree with Sherry on. She said we owe it to future generations to make this a better place. My group and I are not asking much, and our demands are for the good of all. For example, is de-escalation and cultural competency trainings, as well as mental health programs for police officers, a bad thing? If that is wrong, I don't know what could possibly be right. I am sick and tired of my Black brothers and sisters being maliciously mistreated and murdered. I worry for my own life, the lives of my future children, and every Black American out there. It is not easy being worried and scared every day that my family members or friends may be killed from a simple traffic stop. Do I hate cops? No. Do I think all cops are bad? No. The problem for me is that we don't know who the good cops are, the bad cops are, or the complicit cops are. We live in a world where trained officers are allowed to act on impulse when they're scared, but regular everyday citizens are expected to remain calm with a gun pointed at them or a knee in their neck. Black people deserve to live a great life without the fear of being murdered while jogging, eating a bowl of ice cream in their own house, sleeping in their bed, walking home, or playing with colorful water guns on a hot day. Try and look at the movement from our perspective. One last thing I'd like to touch on is how people of color are feeling about living and being in Selah. Many have expressed being mistreated and unwelcomed. Whether it's in schools, jobs, or neighborhoods, the hatred has got to stop. Selah community, please stand up for what is right. Join our cause and know that we are doing this for everyone. Hate has no home here. And while it may be easy to ignore things that don't affect you, remember that being neutral in situations of injustice is to choose the side of the oppressor. I am calling on the people of Selah to take action. As the late and great Congressman John Lewis said, if you see something that is not just, not right, not fair, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Our next speaker is Gabriel Fabian.
Alright, hello everyone. My name is Gabriel Fabian and I'm 20 years old. I was just 13 years old when I knew that this town was different. At 12 years old, I moved from California to Selah. In California, I had a very diverse group of friends, so it was normal to interact with people from different cultures. When I got here, it wasn't much different making friends that were white. However, their attitude towards people of color was drastically different. One day at the lunch table, I was hanging out with my friends and they started making fun of some of my Latino friends. When I called them out for it and said, hey, I'm Mexican too, they told me I was a different kind of Mexican. And that's when I realized that these kids are raised with implicit biases. Fast forward to high school and I'm prohibited from wearing my rosary, a symbol of my faith. The school security and vice principal at the time told me if I continued to wear it, that I would be suspended and that it was gang related. Though my white classmates were able to walk freely wearing the same type of necklace. See, the hypocrisy in this situation is that later down the road, they allowed students to wear hate symbols like the Confederate flag on their hat or even as a sweater. And at that young age, I knew that my rights were being infringed because of the color of my skin. Now I'm 20 years old. A typical 20-year-old would be more focused on school, girls, video games, and work. And I should be focused on those things, but instead I'm here in the streets advocating for social justice. See, I decided to support the BLM movement with my chalk drawing on my dead-end street. People of the city decided they didn't agree and felt entitled to pushing their beliefs onto me by erasing me and threatening to prosecute me. Despite its constant removal, I continue to support the BLM movement with my chalk art. I do it because it's the most peaceful way I know I can protest show support for the oppressed. I'm showing my city that this message isn't going to go away just because they don't agree with it. I experienced discrimination firsthand, and now I want to make sure that the next generation doesn't have to endure what I had to. I don't want them to feel less than. I'm young, I'm still learning, and I will make mistakes. I'll continue to make mistakes because if you don't, you're not growing as a person. Though I'm not perfect, I'm doing my best to make lasting change. That being said, I'm certainly not a punk, a Marxist, a bad actor, a narcissist, evil, or devoid of intellect and reason. I'm a young, passionate Latino activist who is proud to be a person of color. Though my city holds me to such a high standard, they fail to meet the same standards themselves. These are experienced adults who demand respect without any accountability for their own actions. When the city administrator insults residents in a whole movement, it's free speech. Yet when I speak out, it's graffiti, malicious mischief, and defamation. Regardless of what label you give me, I'm here to say that we're going to continue to fight for long-term equality, that it's time for change and it's coming, so get ready. Thank you for your time and for helping to educate me, because if it weren't for the city's ignorant mindset, I would not have been exposed to this learning opportunity. Don't forget that Black Lives Matter.
Wow. Thank you so much, Gabriel. So before we have our final speaker come up, I'm just going to say a little bit about myself here. My name is Charlotte Town, and I am a Selah resident, and I'm also one of the administrators of the SAFE group on Facebook, and one of the organizers that helps put this all together. If the press here or anyone else has any questions after our speaking, you can direct them towards me, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Our final speaker today is Pastor Davis.
Thank you. How's everybody doing this morning? I want you to come and do something for me. I want you to come and stand beside me and behind me, because this is something that is unified. I want the people to see that we are together. Come on, stand next to me. Don't be scared. Yeah. Don't be scared. My bark is worse than my bite. I'm going to give you a definition of Selah. In the Hebrew, it means to praise or to pause and reflect upon what has just been said. As a pastor, first of all, for all of you who don't know me, my name is Reverend Donald Joseph Davis Jr., and I pastor one of the oldest African descent denomination church in Yakima and Yakima County, which is Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. And this year is 114 years old. But growing up in Louisiana and seeing the injustices in the 50s and 60s and seeing relatives murdered for fighting for civil rights, for the right to vote, and seeing how the cowards put sheets over their heads. And there were police, there were other types of citizens of the white race. And to experience that as a young man, but to also experience Dr. Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, Andrew Jackson, Andrew Young, and some of those great forefathers who fought for civil rights. And to have the privilege to have C.T. Vivian and Andrew Young and John Lewis Lafitte, Bernard Lafitte, and those to mentor me as a young man and as a pastor. I want to leave you with the words from John Lewis's last words, just a few quotes. And it says, like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. And we have been nonviolent. We have been threatened. We have been called out of our names, but we never retaliate with any other verbiage. And he goes on to say, he said, we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said, it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said, each of us has a moral obligation to stand up and speak up and to speak out against injustices. And this is an injustice. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of seeing my young black brothers and sisters being murdered by the hands of police officers and then not being persecuted, not being prosecuted. I'm 65 years old, and it's not but by the grace of God I'm still here, because it could be me. It could be any one of us here whose life has been taken too soon. And some of these young people's lives have been taken too soon, and I come to say that black lives do matter. Black lives do matter. When you have 3,000 signatures saying that change needs to come, you need to listen to your constituents. If not, that's why my forefathers fought for the voters' rights. And we know how to get you. Non-violently. Get out and vote. Vote them out of office. They don't want to hear you. Vote them out. Vote them out. That speaks more than anything you could ever do, is vote those who are not trying to do what's right. How can you be impatient with your constituents when they bring you something that is relevant to them today? An elected official is to hear the people's voice. And if you don't hear our voice, we know how to get rid of you. By the vote. Just like on November 3rd, we're going to vote, and we're going to continue to vote. The vote is real. You want to get rid of injustice? Vote them out. You want to get rid of people who are not trying to hear you or do the right thing for all people? Vote them out. The vote is powerful. Over my 65 years, I've seen how powerful the vote is. And I've never not voted. And I'm going to continue to vote. And I encourage each and every one of you young people, don't be moved by what they say about you. You are more than a conqueror. You are above and not beneath. You're the head and you're not the tail. And you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Don't let nobody tell you you're not worth it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Davis. So Courtney has an announcement, and then we're going to close out.
All right, so just a quick announcement I wanted to make is that tonight at 6 o'clock, we're going to be meeting in front of the Civic Center here in Selah for a peaceful sidewalk demonstration. Come on down. We're going to have water, snacks. We're going to be holding signs. and just spreading awareness about the movement here in Selah. So please join us and spread the word. And thank you all for being here.
I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to talk to me or Kareem or Courtney, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions. Thank you.